How are you?
I'm really good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Fabulous role, Les Mis. What were some of the challenges of singing live on set?
I suppose one of the challenges was that with film schedules, unfortunately, you can never choose when you're going to be singing your song. So there were times when you'd be doing it in the middle of the night whilst being dragged through a swamp at 5 in the morning with a cold. And unfortunately, you couldn't go, guys, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so can we put that on hold? So that was one of the challenges. The other challenges was doing hundreds of takes. You know, like if you do take after take after take, and they're quite challenging songs. But at the same point, I can't imagine doing it any other way. Like the Amanda Seyfried, who had done Mamma Mia and had done a lot to playback then, had said that you spend so much of your headspace thinking about moving your mouth at the right time that actually it's difficult to be present, to be in the moment. So.
Okay, so in a way, it was easier.
Absolutely. I would have hated to have done it the other way.
There.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your feeling as an actor with Tom Hooper's extreme close-ups?
Well, I mean, I'd worked with Tom before. We'd done a thing called Elizabeth with Helen Mirren before. I love the way that Tom works. I think that he had a whole take on this story, which was that, you know, it's an epic scaled story, but it's about the epic scale of as it were, the plot and this extraordinary thing that was happening, but it's also about humanity and the idea. I mean, he talks about the sort of the epic scale of the human emotion really in the face, and so I think his choice to go from the intimate to the macrocosm is very. I thought it played for the story beautifully.
Yeah, it was so moving. We're all in tears, and you're just so fabulous. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much. That
Enjoy
means
tonight.
I will do. Nice to see you.
Oh yeah, thank you. So good to meet you. Please welcome the president of the board of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, Doug Stone.
Good evening, and welcome to kind of the halfway point of the 28th Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Tonight is the Virtuosos Award. It's a great evening, a chance not to see one person, but to see 6 people who had fantastic performances this year. The moderator for tonight, his 3rd year in a row, he is the host of The Frontrunners on Fandango, Dave Karger. Please welcome Dave.
Thank you so much. It is my absolute pleasure to be back a 3rd year hosting the Virtuosos. This is a highlight of my year. I love this crowd, I love this theater, I love this town, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. I will tell you, if there's one thing that our 6 very impressive virtuosos can teach us, it's that when you're an actor, a breakthrough moment in your career can happen at really any time. It can happen in your first professional acting job, as it did with our Oscar nominee Quvenzhané Wallis from Beasts of the Southern Wild. It can happen when you're, let's say, in high school or college age, like Elle Fanning or Ezra Miller. It can happen when you've been at it for about a decade or so, when you're in your early 30s, like Eddie Redmayne or Omar Sy. Or it can happen when you've been toiling on stage, film, and television for over 3 decades, like Ann Dowd. It is a fantastic half dozen of actors tonight that I'm going to have the pleasure to introduce you to, but before I do, let's watch a highlight reel of their work. Okay, now it is my pleasure, well, before I bring on Eddie Redmayne from Les Miserables, let's watch a little bit of Eddie Redmayne in Les Miserables. Please welcome Eddie Redmayne. How are you? Great to see you.
Oh, thank you. Yet more crying.
I love bumping into you at all these events because I get to check out your awesome clothes.
Well, thank you, yes.
I love that.
I feel like I'm wearing a sort of, like a picnic. Like you could have a picnic on.
So there's these already legendary stories that people have heard about this crazy audition process that people went through to get in this movie Les Miserables. Hugh Jackman had these 3-hour auditions. What makes you different is that you're one of the few, if not the only, major cast member of this film who had actually worked with the director, Tom Hooper, before. I want to know, at what point in the casting of this movie did you come on board? So when you found out you had this part, who was already cast? And then who did you then find out after you signed on was then going to be on it? Or were you not really privy to all that?
So I was, I remember I was making a film in North Carolina playing a sort of Texan meth addict. And I heard that Tom was making Les Mis, and I'd seen it as a kid. I absolutely loved it when I was a kid. And so I put myself on tape in my trailer on an iPhone. And I actually sent it to my agent, really just to say that I enjoyed singing. I hadn't particularly told my agents this. And he then flung that on to the head of working title, who, and that was the start of my audition process. At that point, I knew Hugh was doing it, and that was it. And my audition process from then, I can only describe it as being something like out of X Factor, and it was like a horrible sort of American Idol style nightmare that involved singing these songs that you've grown up loving to the people who wrote them. And I mean, Claude Michel Schoenberg was the equivalent of Simon Cowell, and but what was interesting was really coming at it, even though I loved the piece, coming at it having worked in film and trying to reinterpret it, and certainly that song, which was my audition song, singing it in a different way and with an intimacy, and there was this horribly scary moment at the end when there was sort of silence in the room, and I was like, are they going to buy that? But then from then on, I got cast, and then I started auditioning with Samantha and Amanda, and really it was about getting, and various other actors and actresses, and about getting chemistries right, I think.
In your heart of hearts, did you know that you had this in you, or did you kind of surprise even yourself when you were filming it?
Well, I started auditioning for, I put myself on tape singing that song, but I actually started auditioning for Enjolras. I think that Tom, to begin with, liked the idea of the students actually being 17 rather than 31. So I don't think you ever quite know whether you have a character in you or not. I knew that I knew I had instincts for this, and Anne was talking about that earlier. Just there was something visceral in it, and when I first sang the song to myself in this trailer, I thought I had an idea that if you pulled it down and made it intimate, and you would have somewhere to go, and you could draw an audience in, and I came up with the idea of also starting it without any accompaniment, because the problem with this thing of doing musicals on film is that the second an accompaniment starts, the audience sit back going, and now I'm ready for the song. So the idea of a thought being spontaneous or instinctive is instantly taken away because they're waiting for the bit when you start. So Tom allowed us all, as did the composers, to have this freedom to play with it, which of course Annie Hathaway does most extraordinarily.
What would you say, I mean, Marius has Empty Chairs, Empty Tables, Heart Full of Love. There's so many tough songs in there with crazy range. What was the one part of this role, whether it's a song or a scene or a plot line, that you were most nervous about taking on, and how did you deal with that?
It's funny you should say that, actually. I think that there's a song called In My Life, and so much in the lyrics of this musical are brilliant and poetic and real and true. And then there are moments which are operatic, like that I'm this politically engaged lad who then sees this girl and decides to throw politics to the wayside for a moment and just sort of changes tact. It's love at first sight. It's Romeo and Juliet. It's operatic in its take. You know, in the book, their courtship is one of 7 months. You know, in the film, it's about 7 seconds. So there's a moment after having literally glimpsed this girl, he runs down a street going, "In my life, she has burst like the music of angels, the light of the sun." And I said to Tom, I was like, this bit is so florid and how do I make it work? Because I was trying, when we started it, sort of doing it under my breath, singing it as if it was spontaneous. And he came up to me and was like, it's not working, mate. I was like, bugger. And he goes, he says, I think this is one of those moments in which, although we're trying to do everything with as close a detail and veracity as possible, this is a moment, an old school movie musical moment in which you run down a street swinging from lampposts and just like give it your all. Like you have to get, and it was very interesting because I ended up doing that, and I think it, that you had to commit 110% to it. That was one of those moments when you had to sort of let it all go. But that was weirdly one of the harder parts.
Given the fact that you're involved in this like intense love triangle in the film, how did that affect the way you and Samantha and Amanda kind of interacted off the set or in between shots? Did you laugh about it? Did you try to keep some of that dynamic going to help the movie?
God, I want to sound all method and go, yes. But no, the true answer is we got on fantastically well. It was such an amalgam of actors, this film. You know, you had, on the one hand, you had Amanda and I who had never done it before, came from a film background, and then you had Samantha who had the sort of massive task of basically, she'd done it on stage to huge success and great acclaim, and she had to unlearn everything that she knew. And, but what was wonderful was she and a lot of the guys, I mean, all the guys who played the students had all generally been in the West End production of Les Mis, and only on about day 3 of filming did I realize that 70% of them had played Marius. And so there was this sort of, which was wildly terrifying, and I decided if you can't beat them, use them, sort of thing. So I sort of asked them for their best bits and saw what I could steal. But they were incredibly generous. They and Samantha were a wonderful resource. People who said, this is how we did it on stage. This were our thought process. And so actually our dynamic, Amanda, Samantha and I, we were, because none of us knew what we were doing. Singing this live on film thing was new to everyone. We were all it was a great sense of camaraderie.
If you think to all the amazing people that you've worked with just in in your film work, not to mention the stage work, but in film, Michelle Williams, Kenneth Branagh for My Week with Marilyn, Matt Damon, Angelina Jolie, Good Shepherd, Hugh Jackman now for Les Mis. Is there someone that in your mind that you feel like you've learned a lot from, either from something they've said to you or just being around them and watching them?
Well, I find it interesting when people go, who have been the most influential, that it's not just about the work, as in how they act, their actual technique as actors, but it's also how they behave, like, and how you live on a film set and how you deal with the notion of status and stature and how to behave and sort of how not to behave and how to keep yourself enclosed and protected in order just to do the work. And I love the variety of it in film. You know, in theatre, you go into a room and the director runs the room. So you all work to his or her method. On film, the director has, if an actor or an actress is in for a day or two, they just have to get out of that actor what they need, and so they have to sort of, as it were, change and adapt to that actor's technique. I'll never forget doing Savage Grace, which was a film I did in which I played Julianne Moore and Stephen Delane's son. And Julie is the most spontaneous, instinctive, brilliant actress. Stephen is also phenomenal, will want to talk about it and rehearse. And so it was this wonderful mixture of watching two completely different actors working in completely different ways, and you in the middle trying to learn from both of them and trying to sort of somehow amalgamate the two. But I suppose certainly Julie, Robert De Niro directed one of my first films, and the way he works, which is often when he's directing, he'll keep the camera rolling. So you'll do one take, and then you'll finish the take at an emotional stature, which you can then literally go straight back to the beginning of the scene again and tap into that place. And so on Empty Chairs and Empty Tables, I asked Tom Hooper if we could put enough film stock in the camera to do 4 takes in a row. So I'd get to the end of Empty Chairs and Empty Tables and be at an emotional place, and then try and sort of suppress all that and start the song again, but you're sort of so G'd up by that point that it is helpful somehow. So he was a great influence on me.
And then lastly, obviously you're doing just fine before this movie. You have a Tony Award. But this role, this film, this performance has brought your fame and your fans to a whole new level. What do you like the best about it?
Oh, God. I don't know. It's interesting, again, what Anne was saying. I've been, as you said at the beginning, I've been working for 10 years in film and theatre, and it's so interesting. There's something that's unplaceable about this. There's something that alchemic that happens with some films that you don't know what it is, but they just hit, and there are other films which you think are good that don't have a place or don't hit a zeitgeist. And the lovely thing is when something you really care about, which I did with Les Mis, because I saw it when I was a kid, I was one of the groupies, you know, and I felt great responsibility as being part of this cast to bring it to screen when they tried for 27 years. And the idea that people are reacting emotionally to it is basically the greatest gift that I could ask for. So.
Well done on you. Eddie Redmayne, everybody.
Thank you so much.